Ghost stories tend to be set in the far-flung past, with countless accounts of Victorian vessels and 15th century ships haunting the waves and terrorizing sailors. But today, we're looking at a ghost ship that lived, so to speak, in living memory, High-Aim 6. This peculiar name belongs to a Taiwanese fishing vessel whose crew were last seen leaving port in 2002. But despite a prolonged investigation, there remains many mysteries to this gruesome story. None more so mysterious than what the sole survivor had to say. So get under the bed covers and lock your windows, because we're now going to investigate the ghost ship High-Aim 6. It was the 31st of October 2002 when a fishing vessel left the port of Liuqiu in southern Taiwan. At first, there was no cause for concern with this routine voyage. In fact, the owner of the ship last spoke with the captain as late as December of that year. But that was the last time anyone spoke with the vessel. Communications stopped, so just a few days later, the owner sensed something was wrong and reported it missing to the Coast Guard. Emergency services were on the lookout for the boat's Indonesian flag. But without an immediate sighting, fears began to mount that something or someone had done something to the ship. There's always the chance of bad weather with boats. Cyclones aren't that uncommon, but many wondered whether pirates had seized the crew. This seemed a bit strange because no ransom message had been received, and if the crew were alive, then it was standard procedure to alert authorities once the pirates had left the ship with cargo. Speaking of cargo, would pirates really bother with an average fishing vessel? And if it had been bad weather, wouldn't have this been flagged in weather reports? Things were not adding up. January 6th, 2003, almost 3 whole months since High-Aim 6 left port, the Australian Navy sees a boat drifting in the ocean. They tried to contact the boat but received no response, which meant the Navy knew they had to get on board the vessel to get answers. No sooner had they set foot on the boat than they realized something was wrong. All the crew were gone, vanished into thin air. They searched the decks for any clues, but they didn't find any answers, only questions. They noticed that the ship had been put into full throttle, though now the main gas tank was dry. Stranger still, the auxiliary fuel tanks were full and had not been switched on, which meant that the crew disappeared after traveling at full speed. Were they trying to evade someone? And if so, why not use the auxiliary tanks? The Australian sailors did find 10 tons of valuable bonito tuna in the refrigeration hold, which meant that if they were robbed, the pirates didn't seem to recognize valuable fish when they saw it. Needless to say, the Navy was baffled, and word quickly spread to residents of this sparsely populated far-off corner of Australia about the ghost ship alone on the waters for weeks and months. Theories were created as quickly as they were debunked. Perhaps the High-Aim 6 had secretly been smuggling people, and they abandoned ship when their passengers died. Yet nothing stood up to scrutiny against the experienced investigators. Tracing the last known movements of the crew, they knew that when the ship left port back in October, it only had a captain and engineer before sailing to Indonesia to pick up a crew of 8 on November 16th. If there was trouble with the crew, the captain didn't report it to the ship's owner over the next month's regular communication, so the investigations dug deeper. There were press reports that the engineer made phone calls from his portable phone in Bali. Some even tied it to recent terrorist attacks in the area, but these were unsubstantiated. No doubt, media outlets wanted to add intrigue to the mystery. What was found to be certain, however, is that the crew went to the Marshall Islands to conduct their fishing mission, placing them almost slap-bang on the cross-section of the Pacific Ocean's north and south part, and the divide between the Indian Ocean and Philippine Sea. Though these waters are expansive, there are still plenty of trading routes, so surely someone saw something. Yet, when the Coast Guard initially searched these waters, they found nothing. But by January 4th, a small Australian plane on a routine surveillance mission for drug smugglers spotted the High-Aim far off the Marshall Islands, making it easier for the Navy to locate it just 2 days later. Photos showed the deck devoid of human life, except for a partial carton of Marlboro cigarettes and a jar of Nescafe coffee left on the dash about the helm. The captain's reading glasses were there too, and the crew's clothes and international documents were neatly left where they should be. If the crew wanted to make a quick escape, then why was everything untouched and undisturbed? But it was the tear-off calendar showing January 3rd that sent chills down investigators' spines. The men had been operating the ship just 48 hours earlier, so whatever happened must have happened recently. Had they missed a vital clue? Had they failed to notice an SOS signal? Some people reasoned the ship had been abandoned, perhaps to avoid capture by customs officers, but this theory of moonlighting as smugglers was discounted. The only logical theory left was one of mutiny. Indonesian crews had been known to turn on their Chinese captain, but the lack of blood or any sign of struggle made it hard to believe the men had murdered each other. Stranger still, no valuable equipment had been stolen, which would be unusual for criminals fleeing the scene of a crime, especially those who might need quick cash to stay off of police radar. But there was one thing missing: the high-frequency radio. This meant that someone did not want the crew to radio for help. This meant sabotage. Had it been pirates, they would have seized the boat for themselves. So investigators wondered whether they were interrupted in their mission shortly after disconnecting the transmitter. Perhaps the crew had fought back against their captors, only for their resistance to go horribly wrong? The missing lifeboat didn't help complete the puzzle either, because although the ship owners say they have rafts, they also admitted to not necessarily providing them on this voyage. Given the weather had been calm for 2 weeks, recovering a life raft should have been easy, yet not a single clue could be uncovered. Whatever theory they had, whatever stone they turned over, it led to dead ends. That was until they tracked down the sole survivor. By following a paper trail with recruiting agencies, investigators found an alleged member of the rudimentary fishing boat living in a province of North Sulawesi. According to his declaration, the crew killed the captain and engineer on December 8th before returning to their homeland. Yet, even this raises many questions. For starters, the sailor couldn't give a clear explanation to the motive or details of the attack. So, coupled with the lack of blood, that suggested that perhaps a false confession had been extracted from him. It is worth knowing that the news of this confession was gathered by the government-controlled news outlet Central News Agency in Taiwan, which many take as a sign of the government wishing to put the mystery to rest to save face. Indeed, it has been hard to substantiate the claim with independent journalism, which raises the possibility that the eyewitness testimony of a mutiny is just another red herring. The remaining members of the allegedly mutinous crew were unable to be found also, but the number of toothbrushes below deck meant that there had to have been at least 7 other men. If these men were alive, where were they? How did they manage to get back home without being detected by passing vessels? And if the murders happened at the start of December, why were the days of the calendar torn away until the start of January? Nothing made any sense. For many, the mystery of this ghost ship drifting in sunny, calm waters has inconclusive answers. For others, the imperfect theories of piracy and mutiny are satisfactory. But for the loved ones of the crew, the mystery remains unsolved. In the end, the ship was deemed abandoned and handed over to the Australian authorities for disposal. If there were any clues hidden on board, they've been lost now, as the ship was ripped apart by heavy equipment before being dumped in a local landfill. It would seem the only people who know for sure what happened are the small crew of the High Aim 6. But without a solid conclusion from the many investigations, it would seem those men are keeping the answers to themselves. Perhaps you have the final puzzle piece. Please share your theories and discoveries in the comment section below. If you'd like us to cover more modern ghost ship legends, then leave a like to let us know. Don't forget to share this with a fan of unsolved mysteries, and be sure to subscribe to get notified of our next video. And, of course, the next time you go on a fishing trip, watch your back.